Hi, executive producer Tom Mumford of Tales of Treasure Island. Today we have Joe and Geraldine Nuzzo. Very, very interesting story about how their mother brought them down in the early 50s. Let's take a look at Tales of Treasure Island.
One day we woke up and Mom said we're going to Florida.
And where were you?
In East Rockaway, Long Island, New York.
Wow, okay. That's cool.
And my grandparents had a pawn shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember some of the stories back then that my grandparents were good at selling, in the pawn shop. And a good little story about the pawn shop is what would be the one item you'd find in a pawn shop back in the 50s. There was lots of them. Well, all the people would come over on their ship and they would, what would you pawn? Well, I always remember seeing the pawn shop and they would be as high as the ceiling with suitcases because people had no more need for a suitcase.
Oh, okay.
Because they've arrived in New York, they're not going anywhere, and they didn't want to pawn their clothes or their belongings inside the suitcase. So the suitcase always wound up in my grandpa's pawn shop. And I got pictures today from Long Island, from New York rather, of his pawn shop with suitcases piled to the ceiling. I wonder if he ever got rid of them, but that's the beginning of the story.
So you had plenty of suitcases to come to Florida with.
But I used to hang out there, that's where I learned a little bit about, I guess I got the blood for selling, and that's how the Suncoast Surf Shop came to be part of that bloodline. But one day my mom...
This be what year would this be roughly?
We left there in 1955 to come to Florida, and we had a dog named Swappy, which for the pawn shop, and what was the other one's name? Lucky and Swappy. Those are our two dogs we had. And Mom said, yeah, they'd be on the train on the way to Florida, and off we go to Florida on the train. And the first thing I remember about being on the train is getting breakfast, and because it's a big deal of seeing the whole world go by. So I got breakfast and started eating my breakfast. I guess we were in the South somewhere, and take a big bite of this stuff I thought was mashed potatoes. It was grits. I've never had grits before in my life. So I spit them out, hit everybody within 5 feet of me, and I've never taken a liking to grits again. So being grits never really, maybe put a lot of sugar and butter, I might eat it, but no grits. But that was on my way to the South, I got introduced to grits, and that was that for me and grits. So we arrived in St. Petersburg.
And that was what, the old Silver Meteor? Is that what it was?
Silver Meteor. Oh yeah, we arrived in Tampa. Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
We arrived in.
Jump in anywhere.
Yeah, speak up. We arrived in Tampa, and we stayed at the Hotel Hillsborough.
Florida Hotel.
Florida Hotel. Thank you. In Tampa, and we got up the next morning. Mom said, "We're going to the beach. We're all gonna grow up on the beach." So she flipped a coin.
Mm-hmm.
One bus was going to Clearwater Beach, and one bus was going to Paso
Oh
Robles.
my gosh, you mean your whole history depended on a flip
We
of a coin?
There was a flip of a coin. Mom flipped a coin and said, it was two buses, and she goes, we're gonna go to Clearwater Beach or we're going to Paso Robles Beach. And it wound up being Paso Robles Beach, and I'm glad. I don't think I would have wanted. I'm glad I didn't want to grow up in Clearwater Beach. So off we go. We got on the green bus. I remember the bus was green. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
And we wound up at Paso Grill, and we pulled up in front of Hurley's. Mom wanted to ask the bus driver to take her to a real estate office because we needed a place to stay.
Yeah.
We had all our suitcases and clothes and everything, but we didn't know where we were going, where we're staying. So she pulled the big old green bus, took us to
Real estate office?
real estate office,
Yeah,
Hurley's
yeah.
real estate office, and we got out with 4 kids.
Wow.
No dogs. The dogs never showed up. So off we go to Mr. Hurley, and Mom goes in there, and she goes, we're going to live about 1 block over, wasn't it, Jerry?
Yeah, 27th.
27th. We rented the house. I think it was $50 a month. It was. I remember that because Mom was saying it was a good deal.
I guess.
Well, that was 55, so that was a lot of money maybe. And it was right next to the Ratcliffes. They lived, the attorney Ratcliffe and his son, they lived right there at the end of the street. And Mom said she needed a job, so Mr. Hurley took her over to Harry Bell's. So she got a job at the fish house there, right?
Packing fish.
Packing and cleaning fish.
Start somewhere.
Okay.
And we learned how to eat mackerel like 50 different ways. You know, there was spam, mackerel, and cheese. Spam was very, you know, cheap and
Right.
inexpensive, but you got to take home mackerel, so we learned how to cook mackerel. If anybody wants mackerel recipes, I got about 50 of them.
Excellent, excellent.
And airplane mechanics, like kind of a license to do work on airplanes. And I went to California, worked for Hughes, and met some guys that surfed, and Clancy and another guy, and Hughes Aircraft, he built all the missile parts that goes to the first manned spacecraft went to the moon.
Really?
Every
Wow.
cable I dipped in sodium, and dipped in sodium etched it and dipped it in gold, and you know that was my job working for. It wasn't mechanical. So I
Use
did-
aircraft?
Yeah, Hughes Aircraft. I
Wow.
worked doing that. But what happened is the surf was up one day, and I was learning how to surf, and Clancy says the waves are good today. So if you ever think about sodium, I put the parts in the sodium bin. Instead of putting one at a time, put like 15. They caught fire, and I burned up
Oh my
the
gosh.
sodium etch room, and lost my job. And
Ouch.
we went to Southern California and lived there and surfed every day and had a good time. Yeah. But came back from California, and I brought an old surfboard with me, a Bing 9-footer. And decided, you know, I'll see if there's. I came to visit Mom, but I wasn't going to stay. But I wound up seeing there was waves in Blind Pass, and they had just built the Starlight. They hadn't built the Starlight Tower yet. I guess the Starlight Tower is going to be built on Sunset Beach. You knew that?
No.
Okay, Starlight Tower is going to be built where our old house used to.
Yeah, they
old
knocked
house
our house down.
down the end of Sunset.
So that fell through and went over across the pass then?
Yeah, that fell through that, but they had knocked the house down. Their plans for that original big, that was one of the big first condos was Starlight Tower.
Yes, it was. It was actually a co-op.
Yeah, and they were gonna do it on Sunset Beach, but something happened. They bought our house and whatever. They moved over there to St. Pete Beach, right? And next thing I know, my mom was living over by St. John's, and I threw the board in the water there, went out, outgoing tide. And looked at the tide chart, said, well, the tide's gonna go out, I'll take the tide out and take the tide back in.
Hour before, hour after,
Yeah,
right? Yes.
so I go out there and just paddle around and come back in, but I got there were waves in Blind Pass, like little waist high waves. I go, what? So I started surfing, and people were coming up to me, because that was like a lover's lane over there.
Nobody had ever seen that.
Now, the south side where,
Yeah.
before they had built Starlight Towers, that was a parking area.
Right.
You could bring your girlfriend or whatever you wanted to do there and hang out. And I pulled up on the beach, and everybody wanted a surfboard. I'm going, all right, I like this, maybe I.
Ka-ching.
Yeah. So I started thinking about a business, but you know, I wasn't ready yet for a business.
Right.
I knew I had the jeans from Grandpa's whatever and Mom's grocery store back. Oh, I bypassed that, but we'll go back to that. But I paddled out, and next thing I know, I got a job the next day working for Bay Auto. You familiar with Bay Auto?
No.
They were at Pasadena, drove a little VW bus to deliver auto parts.
Auto parts, okay, yeah.
Auto parts
okay.
all over the beach.
Right.
And Bay Auto Parts, I forget the name of the guy. I come back, because I had my surfboard in there, and he'd always look at me and go, how come your hair's wet? How come you've been an hour? You went over to Brad's Texaco to, you know, drop some parts off, and here you are an hour back here later, your hair's wet. I go, you gotta put some air conditioning in this VW bus. I said, the bridge was stuck. The bridge was always stuck with the air conditioning. So I got away with that for a while, till one day I looked and think, what's this? I go, that's a surfboard, I'm just carrying it around with me. He put two and two together. And then from there, I decided to start, you know, I went to work for National Aviation,
Okay.
working on engines, which I was
And that was where?
in Clearwater, St. Pete
Clearwater,
Clearwater Airport,
Clearwater,
worked there for a while. And I had long hair, and I've been working there a few months, about 4 or 5 months, whatever. Did a good job, and he said I was the best mechanic they ever had, but the boss came down and told my supervisor to tell this guy to go home and don't come back till he gets a haircut. So,
You want to get your hair cut and the parts and machinery.
well, no, he just didn't like some hippie looking guy.
Yeah.
This is the 60s, and, you know, he was clean cut, crew cut, whatever, looked like a whatever. He had his tie and his nice office up there looking at everything. But I never went back and started the surf shop. And I was in 66 out of my house, and in 67 out of that place right next to Benjamin's.
Right, okay. when we were starting.
So-
Did you, how did you start your business? Did you order boards from California?
Well, I
or
had
did you
the
start
one
building
board
them?
I came home with from
Mhm.
California,
Mhm.
and I met Bill Feinberg on the East Coast. He was making oceanside surfboards. And I went over to the factory and talked to him. I had a VW bus, in fact. Tom's got a picture, but
Or like Daytona,
we've
or-
lost it over the years. Had colorful flower print all over, a hippie
Yeah.
print car. So I go over Cocoa Beach,
Cocoa Beach, okay.
buy a board or two, because I saved some money from working at the aircraft place, and got 2 boards, 3 boards, some stickers, some T-shirts, and opened up legitimately, because I was
Right.
selling out of my house.
Right.
Is that illegal? I guess, I don't know, who knows? It was 66. They can't come after me now.
Selling my surfboard.
So we started about 67 out of that little location, and
Rest is.
wasn't making a whole bunch of money, but having fun, drinking red wine, and was showing surf movies inside there a lot on the weekend nights, and the kids would come out and like it. And the next thing I know, the landlord told me to pack up and get out of there. The police were saying they didn't want us long-haired hippies, and we'd surf, and they banned surfing here on Treasure Island. So
They
said,
banned it?
totally no surfing, wasn't allowed to possess or be in the water on a surfboard.
Wow.
And they used to come out with their rifles, and we'd be surfing, and they would have bullhorn, and they'd yell at us to get off the beach, come on in, you're under arrest, for surfing. It's ordinance something or
No
other, whatever.
way.
So we weren't allowed to surf. That was back, who was the chief of police back then?
Gene Marshall was
Gene
one.
Marshall,
Gene
maybe.
Marshall,
And I think there was a cop named Bunch that really loved us.
Hubert Bunch.
Hubert Bunch.
Yep,
He wasn't a very friendly cop,
he was
no.
tough.
And then there was a big jolly rounded guy, what's it?
Anderson.
Anderson, Roy.
Mhm.
Mr. Roy. Roy was one of the ones. And then there was the guy, the skinnier guy, that
Freddie Morris.
Freddie Morris.
Was
He was our
Mr.
Barney Fife.
Yeah, he was our Barney Fife. He was always wanting to open up a record store. I remember him well. But they came, and we'd paddle over to St. Pete Beach, right, and surf there. And then eventually St. Pete Beach had made an ordinance the same thing. So back and forth we'd go with, get out of the water, and we'd go over to St. Pete Beach, and St. Pete Beach cops would come out and get out of the water. And eventually we had the Surfrider Foundation, or somebody, they sent a bunch of lawyers to both town halls and said that they were violating our rights about the high tide line. And their lawyers were highfalutin guys from California. And they came all the way out here and got us our surfing privileges back.
So where would you hang out? I mean, after
Well-
hours, or what did you
Well, they
have a
kicked
favorite
us,
spot?
they kicked
or-
me out of the Benjamin's place next door.
Right.
And I had to find quickly to have I wind up where I was. They asked me to be out there by Christmas time, and I said I'm done. I was going to quit. I wasn't making any money anyway.
Yeah.
But I rode around the VW bus and found the 9841 for sale. It was a Motorola TV shop back then, and then it became a florist after that. I think it was Motorola TV shop originally. I met the old guy later on in life. And Mrs. Agnes Arnold wanted $1,200 down and $6,200 for the building. I didn't have any. I had a few $100, so I started a thing called the Suncoast Surfing Syndicate, and it would cost you $3 for a membership card and so much money for a T-shirt. I got enough money to go down there. I called the city and said, "Is my occupational?" The city was pushing my landlord to get us out of here because we were different, whatever. And I called the city and I said, they didn't know who I was. I said, "Well, if you have a license to sell on Treasure Island, is your license movable to another location?" They go, "Certainly." I go, "Thank you." Hung up. I go, "They didn't know it was me." Or else they'd have changed the law. There wouldn't have been no Suncoast search. So off I go down the road, and I gave Agnes the $1,200. I accumulated about $9. Mom owed me $3. Mom always loaned me money. Well, it kept the family going.
The seed money.
So we went down there and painted it orange and green and a whole bunch of wild colors, and put some sand on the floor, I think, and a pool table, a jukebox, and a pinball machine.
Paid the rent.
And paid the rent, the pool table, pinball machine, the jukebox. My mortgage was $93 a month, I remember that.
Sweet.
And there we were. And then within a week after I was there, the city came by and they go on checking licenses. And another week later, the chief of police and all those guys came in, going, looking at us. And their excuse to come in, I remember, I'll never forget, was they wanted me to buy tickets to the policeman's ball.
There you go.
So I bought two, they were $5 each. I remember I bought 2 tickets. I was never gonna go, just to get them out of the store. I gave them $10. That was like the whole week's income for the week.
Oh my God, you came up hard there, boy.
It was fun. And then somewhere around there, Mom had a grocery store, 2 of them.
She had the one at the Seahorse Cottages, that
That
one.
was a grocery store there, wasn't there?
Yeah.
The front
The
part.
Winn-Dixie, nothing was there but fiddler crabs and swamps right
Yeah,
across
the
the
mangroves
street,
are
yeah.
right there.
And
We used to hang out at the TI Auditorium, Friday night dances, Sunday was the municipal beach.
So you knew about the impact, was that?
The Impacts, yeah, Butch
They're
Wanted.
gonna interview, they're gonna come in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The-
and Jimi Hendrix showed up there one night on a Sunday night.
Really?
Yep, on the Treasure Island.
At the auditorium
At the
on Friday
auditorium.
night, yeah.
And he used to hang out across the street from my shop at the Red Barn, looking for girlfriends, whatever he was doing. But he was in town all the time.
Mhm.
The people over in Gulfport, Mickey, and you remember them? They made all of Hendrix's clothes.
Oh, yeah, Elena, yeah.
They lived over in Gulfport.
Oh, yeah.
So Jimmy would come in to get all his clothes made up, and I knew Mickey and them. They dropped him off at the bar across the street, and he'd come over and play pool in the shop. And I found an old picture of the pool table and the jukebox and everything inside the shop.
We
So
want that.
I think you're gonna want it.
You got any pictures of him?
No,
Got
'cause
any
I didn't know who he was the first day or two.
You have some old pictures of the shop and everything,
Oh yeah,
right? That we
lots of
can
that. But he
we-
came in.
bring those in during the interview kind of.
How about Jim Morris, Joe?
He-
Did you ever
he
see
used to-
him when
he
he
used
was
to-
going to school at JC?
No, but he used to hang out at Boar's, where Tom owned that place over in Pinellas Park. And I've been there a bunch of times, but nobody, you know, it was so dark in there and whatever. It was just like nobody knew anybody. It was like walking around in a, you know, a haze. But I'm sure he was there many times that we used to go out there a lot as kids. And Tom used to, he's dead now, but he was, you know, a sweet guy, real nice guy. That was one of the good hangouts for kids to go.
What about favorite foods, or where did you eat, or did you have a hangout like the
A&W root beer.
A&W?
A&W, yeah. The Carvar building, that little
Root beer frosted,
drugstore, soda shop
Yeah.
in there, yeah.
the,
Now it's the R Bar.
Yeah, that used to be the A&W root
Yeah.
beer. the
That
old
was
bar,
A&W,
Yeah.
yeah. Kentucky Fried Chicken was right there.
Where the Fifth Third Bank is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was a Kentucky Fried. And then there was always Lums, we used to, but that was later in life. than
Yeah,
the
but
Golden
they used to be
Phoenix.
the little drugstore there,
Right on the corner.
Right on the corner.
Cofar building.
yeah.
They had a counter.
They
Right.
had the best hamburgers.
And vanilla milkshakes were good. Right, Jimmy, over the years, we just sort of met him, and he'd come visit all the time. We'd hang out, go sailing. We gave him sailing lessons and did some boating and a little bit of drinking and whatever else went on during those days in the '60s or that was early '70s. And one time he visited and he played at we took him to the Keg and Cork. Remember the old Keg and Cork, Madeira Beach, across the street from Harold's Night Gun
Yeah.
Club, which used to be Smolin's Lounge. You remember Smolin's Lounge? No. That was right there where, across the street, you know, this, what is it called today?
Shanny Hogan's was
It
right
was-
there, right there by
Yeah.
the pass.
That's it. Shanny Hogan's, that's it, thank you.
Yeah, that
Not-
burned, that was on the fire that burnt down.
But there was Smolin's Lounge, where was that? Where went to get the Smolin's?
I thought it was right in there.
That was in there too,
Yeah.
I think that was,
Maybe
I think it was
before.
Hogan's and Smolin Lounge later on, I'm not sure. But, where's it gonna go? Well, Jimmy Buffett again. We used to go to, John and Dolly's,
Mhm.
you know where that
Yeah.
was? The little
Paradise.
Paradise Pier. And whenever he was in town, we'd go to Paradise Pier, because we get a big old chunk of grouper, and the steaks were like unreal. And one night, Pete Merrigan, who
Band.
the band, Pete
Yeah.
Merrigan, I could go back to that story, how they wound up here too, if you want, but Pete Merrigan was playing with Shackett, I think, at Keg and Cork,
Heat shack,
Yeah, and they were, and Buffett, you know, we were on our way to dinner and heard all the music, and we, you know, said we'd be back after we ate. So we came back and Jimmy started playing. I got the tape even to this day, but
Fantastic.
him playing. But he joined in and played with Shack at American, and then they all went over to my house or Jason's house. I forget what happened. And got up in the morning. I was going to take him to the airport. Actually, we never went to bed. I think we stayed up all night partying. We wound up going to the airport. We got to go to the airport. I go, Jimmy, I just bought a new 23-foot Seacraft. Let's go. He's going to Key West. So off we went to Key West.
On the boat.
On the boat. And Jimmy went to get groceries. I said, well, Jimmy, here, take the car, go get some food and beer. You know, so got a whole bunch of good beers and came back with, I think, Reese cups or something. I forget what it was. A whole bunch. It would be like no food. It was just candy bars and
Coke.
Beer?
no Coke. It was just beer and candy bars. And off we went to Key West and went to Cabbage Key Hideaway down south of here, but a little bit south of Boca Grande, and went up there and had the cheeseburger and hung out and signed a dollar bill. Jason and I and him and Mike Wheeler's managed the four of us. Signed a dollar and put it up on the wall, but somebody stole that years later. But and we hung out there, and this girl said, I'll take you up to the tower. There's a fire tower, and up there. And we gonna get gas, you know, at Sanibel, South Seas Plantation,
Mhm.
whatever. And we completely spaced out and took off out of just south there, that next little outlet, what the heck's the name of it, whatever.
Okay.
Went out one of the
Yeah.
Redfish Pass or something like
Right,
that.
right.
And went out that and headed to Key West and forgot to get gas.
Oops.
So
Ran
we ran out of gas somewhere in the middle of the night, and because we planned on making it there by daytime, but we stayed at Cabbage Key too long. But we wound up, Buffett and I and Mike Wheeler, who just died recently, and Jason lives in Madeira Beach, out of gas, and we don't know where we were, the boat was so new, it didn't have a compass, so we had this little handheld thing that we were going, you know,
Navigators.
navigator, you know. We didn't have any, like, you know, no radio with a radio direction. We had nothing. We just knew 180 south was gonna get Key West, so we didn't know where the hell we were. So the only thing I did, there was a 5-gallon can of gas at my house, and a big old, I collected old flares that were outdated. So I said, I won't need the gas. I took the flares just for the hell of it. Well, we got out there. We didn't know where we were. We shot off like 50 flares.
This is a little song we're going to do for anybody that spent the day out on the water today. That was, what a day, huh? I'm going to do this tonight for a friend of mine in the audience who's been around a long, long time. Actually, we took a boat one time. We were navigationally impaired at the moment. We actually left Tampa Bay and we were headed to Key West, and we missed it. We got close, but we missed it. So after that, I tried to improve my navigational skills in the South Florida waters. As the good sailor I try to be. Joe Nuzzo, this is for you. As the son of a sailor.
And talk about fun, you know, there were parachute flares, the fish were jumping. Then we looked, we were in like 2 feet of water, 3 feet of water. So we're probably, thank God, we ran out of gas, or else Jimmy Buffett and all of us would have been like majorly hurt somehow.
So where were you? Off the
Okay,
10,000
we were
islands
about,
or so?
no, we were about 10 miles out of Key West.
Oh, you were.
So we were pretty close. We weren't, we were a little bit to the right. We would have probably wound up going, you know, to Cuba or something, but
Yeah.
we wouldn't have enough gas to get there anyway. But
Amazing.
we turned on the radio. We got a radio. I did get a stereo. I never got a compass when I first got the boat. Turned on the stereo, and it's Tom Corcoran, who's a writer, wrote a lot of books. And he's on the radio. He says, "This is Tom Corcoran sitting in the night for so-and-so, Debbie so-and-so. And this is for all you nautical wheelers at sea tonight." That's the first thing that comes on the radio.
Nautical wheelers.
Nautical wheelers who call themselves sailors. So that song says, we about, you know, wet our pants, and we were laughing. And we were, you know, we were sideways because we've been partying for 2 days. And we're just figuring, you know, well, we're pretty close. We got radio contact. But now we've shot all these flares off, and Tommy McDonald and a bunch of other people down the pier house waiting for us. And people inland could see all these flares, you know, whatever, wherever we were. You know, everybody's gathering, they thought there's something going on out there. Well, there was. But we were in such shallow water, nobody could get to us. So we were taking a flashlight going, add a beer, Reese cups running low.
Worst case.
Worst case, we didn't know what the hell we were saying. We were in another world. And then there was airplanes and, you know, the whole world was looking for us. And all of a sudden, you know, you sit long enough, you can start a motor up again. You ever run out of gas?
Yeah.
And you sit long enough drips in the carburetor. So we started up again and we started, you know, working our way where we're, you know, south yet. And all of a sudden, this big old Coast Guard boat puts a big light on us, another Coast Guard boat, and helicopters shining lights and everything. And because we were the only thing moving around there now.
Rescued.
And well, we didn't want to be we didn't know whether we, you know, because we're fine, you know. And the Coast Guard, it was a Saturday night, and the Coast Guard guy goes, well, do you know anything about all those flares? Yeah, we saw that, you know. And they go, you sure you guys don't know anything about it? I go, why? He goes, well, we want to call this search off, you know, end the night. And Buffett and all of us said, yeah, it was us.
Out of gas.
And then we told them we were out of gas. They go, you don't shoot that many flares off, you're out of gas. I go, well, we figured we'd get somebody's attention. So they towed us into the pier house and held me because I was the owner of the boat and I didn't have FL numbers on, couldn't find a registration. And you know, Jimmy Buffett was a little famous then, just starting to get famous, and the Coast Guard let him go and everybody else go. They went to Captain Tony's, they're on the stage singing away, and Joe's sitting there being, can I go now? So they let me go, and I found those guys, and they're on the stage singing, and next thing I know, they threw me up there on the stage, and here's our captain, who couldn't find Key West. But there's a lot more stories, but that's just one of them, but there's a lot more. Go
Now, talk a little bit about Mom in the grocery store. So that was at the Seahorse Cottage.
Seahorse Cottages, the Patricks rented the front of it out to her, and she put groceries in there. Now, we came from
Kilmartin.
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 Kilmartin,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Kilmartin. But we did have a grocery store in Gulfport for a while.
Yes.
Right there where
Sunrise Market.
Sunrise Market, where
Yeah.
Save on Seafood is, 15th Avenue South and 49th Street. So that building was our grocery store. But she said, we're going back to the beach. So somehow or another, we packed up the groceries, and she rented the little place there. And it's before the real estate office on the right, that where the guy has the paddle boards in his backyard.
There's some prior discussions down by the Bilmar or any,
She
they had like pits there.
Do you remember the Flying Cavarettas?
That's what some people were, that was the next question.
Yeah.
Remember those people? You were close to them, right?
Yeah, we used to play with them all the
Now,
time.
what were they?
They were trapeze, and they ended up going to Circus in Las Vegas, and they were famous out there. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
They were Candy, Judy,
Then they had a trapeze set up right in the yard.
Right in the
there,
yard,
and you
yeah.
could see it from
Mhm.
the boulevard.
they would have
I
like
remember that now,
Yeah.
too.
zip lines or something, I don't know, yeah.
Trapeze,
They're-
flying trapeze artists.
And you used to play with the kids?
Yeah, oh yeah, they had the trampolines there, and yeah,
Huh.
that's cool.
And
Then I
back,
went to see them in Vegas, and they didn't know who I was. This is like 30 years later. So I told them, they went, oh my gosh.
Geraldine.
Treasure Island.
I
Yeah.
remember one thing about Treasure Island. You couldn't buy beer anywhere on Sundays, forever and a day. And the chief of police came in begging my mother one day for beer, you know, on a Sunday, because they were having a party.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what, something was going on. And Mom says, I can't do that, I'll lose my liquor, you know, beer and wine license. And he says, look, I'm the chief of police, and he was a good guy. So pretty much, she sold it to him, a little brown bag out the back door, there was those bottles of Pepsi, Blue Ribbons, the big bottles, the quarts, whatever. I remember
50
sitting there,
cents a quart.
you know, Mom's going, I don't know whether I should have done that. You know. Well, you know, nothing got done, every Sunday, he'd come get a few beers, whatever, and it got to be a little close-knit, you know, that she felt protected, that the chief's not gonna arrest her.
Mhm.
So she,
Well,
and she you know, she made her living selling the beer. The groceries was good, but the beer was the money-making thing, because there's nowhere else to buy beer around there.
They make me
So what was
talk
your favorite
weird.
meal at the Golden
At the
Phoenix?
gold, oh, let's see, Hong Kong steak.
Oh, I never had that.
Oh, it was so
Is that
good.
good?
And they made the best wings, hot wings, Chinese style, yeah. Used to go there after work.
And who was your
Yeah.
favorite waitress there?
Fran.
Fran.
Fran,
She's
and
still-
Lum was the owner, and his brothers. And, yeah, we hung out there for years. Years
And where
years.
did we have our Christmas party?
Every year there.
Golden Phoenix?
Christmas
Golden Phoenix
party.
Christmas party.
Yeah. It was a hangout, quite a place. Every night.
The food was great. It was just a good
Yeah.
place to
Really
sit down.
missed
And,
Yeah, it was sad.
What was your favorite there,
The
Joe?
rent went up so high, so.
God, good question. I think I ate everything there.
Yeah.
I didn't. It was-
Their rent went up?
Shrimp, yeah,
Yeah,
their
yeah.
rent
Their rent went up
way
2 or
up.
3 times what they were paying. And then it sat vacant, what, 7, 8, 10
Oh, yeah.
years?
Mhm.
It's like,
They moved
excuse me, you
Yes.
kicked out the best landmark restaurant in the town.
And then those new people took over and they didn't do very good. They tried, but didn't work.
Well, Sunset Beach was all woods before they built the Land's End. And what's that other thing they built there? Those 2 big
Mansions.
mansions
Yeah,
by the sea.
no high rises.
No high rises. And we used to go there, and that was like we'd park our cars under that big pine tree. They had a big old pine tree. It was, you could drive down there and surf there and have fun. We had surf contests there. It was like, oh my God, this is, died and went to heaven. And then we go to the other side before they built Starlight Towers, before they banned you from going on, blind,
Surfing,
blind pass, right at the pass. There was a beach there. You could drive right up on the beach there before. In other words, you'd come in by where Woody's is and go right over to the end there and just sit there.
Well, any seawall at that time was
No,
there?
no, it was just a little jetty thing, whatever.
I remember when the pass closed.
Oh yeah, you could walk across.
Right.
Yeah, that was fun. That was different. They finally dredged that up, but it was kind of fun because growing up we had those 2 places and Sand Key. We'd go up to Sand Key. That was an adventure. We go all the way up
Clearwater.
towards Clearwater, and Sand Key was,
Yeah.
just a place to take your girlfriend and your old
That was
Mercury, your
wide
old,
open there,
old
wasn't it?
Ford, and just park and,
All country.
or old Studebaker, whatever you had, and just chill with your surfboards. And there's no surf, everybody just sit around and, hang out. But what happened, I guess Mr. Russell died. He owned all that property.
On the end down.
And when he died, in his will, it said that it would never get sold. He said he wanted to leave it intact the way it was. But his wife, this is all hearsay, but this is probably true. I don't know. His wife said that he was crazy. It was in the paper. A couple of articles about it in the paper said that she deemed that he wasn't in his right mind when he signed his will, last will and testament. And so she said, and some judge, figured, okay, you're probably right. So she sold the property, and that's where the condos came from. But other than that, if his piece of paper would have stayed, there would have been still
The park.
bare land there, where you could go down there, it was heaven down there. And we had the last house burnt down. Remember, the very last house. There was a house up by the pine tree.
Mhm.
So vagrants or something got in there and burned it down. That burnt down back in the early 60s. But I remember there used to be over where
I don't remember
what
the
the Dillies, the vape shop,
Yeah, the Dills.
right there,
Yeah,
Mr. Dilly.
right.
But right behind there was a house. We know where that little grocery store was, not like not a 7-Eleven, but it was a mini mart or something right there in the corner
Mhm.
on Treasure Island.
That's where the Hobie Cat shop used to
Yep.
be.
Well, but there was also
Gulf Coast Cats. Gulf Coast.
right there by that.
Oh, the Breeze Inn.
Was it the Breeze Inn? It
The
was a
Breeze
little
Inn Market or something?
Yeah, little
Yeah,
market.
right.
But behind that, at one time, there was an old house,
Right.
and I remember.
That's close to Hank's or no?
No, right behind the
No,
Breeze Inn Market,
Okay. I don't
where
remember that.
there was a Breeze Inn Market and also Beach Nuts, which became
Next to
the
it,
catamaran
right,
shop, Beach
yeah.
Nuts. But right behind there was an old house, and I remember the hurricane that came that year and destroyed the house because it was the closest to the water in the whole county of Treasure Island City, and pieces of it were going down in front of the surf shop all day long, all night long,
Chunks. Floating.
floating.
A lot
Yeah.
of water.
A lot of water. So the road turned into sand. I don't know what hurricane that was or what happened, but
But we were sandbagging all night, and then it Her mom says, get upstairs and go to bed. So we went to bed. It was like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. We cried. We wanted to stay in the house next door. And she said, no, get upstairs. So next morning we woke up, that house that was right there was gone.
Gone.
Completely off the foundation out in the Gulf.
Oh, from
Boy,
Ghana?
yeah.
Wow, what year was that?
It was like, I believe, 59.
Wow. And then we had the Zanzibar down the end of Sunset, that was a good watering hole, remember the
Yep.
Zanzibar?
Oh, yeah.
Sammy.
Sammy to Driftwood, that's been around forever and a day.
Penguin,
The Penguin, that man that used to cut the steaks in his little,
Winston,
Winston on his
Sam
little,
Hunter.
his carving cart.
his carving cart, I like that. And I remember going up there once and they had the Driftwoods, Drifters.
Drifters,
Oh,
Drifters
yeah.
are
fabulous
The
drifters.
Drifters,
Yeah.
the old black group
Yeah,
that sung, doo-doo-boo-boom.
they're fantastic.
They were there and I was drinking cocktails with them and I think we all got up and sung one song with them, it was kind of fun.
Oh, that's fun, that's a good one.
Oh, Sunset Beach and.
Sunset Beach, Zanzibar,
Zanzibar.
and right next door to the Zanzibar was a grocery store, originally a grocery store, I think, and
It's a
a
laundromat,
laundromat.
right.
And my mom bought the apartment complex right across the street, but they knocked that down, they put a new, more modern one. But,
Yeah, that's that fourplex there at the,
no, it's, that, not the ground floor ones, the one to the
No, it's a
right, the
two-story.
two-story, yeah.
yeah.
That
That was
mom.
the Starlight Motel, wasn't it, or hotel?
I think it might have been Starlight.
Starlight
She owned
Hotel,
that.
yeah.
But she said, my mom was, see what happened is my mom, I guess, my grandpa, my grandma, my grandpa blood was retail sell, you know. My mom picked that up with the grocery store and got the hotel, the whatever motel on Sunset Beach and she bought another place, the Royal Stewart Arms, and, you know, in other words, she always yelled at us, we didn't help out that much, but she got real good, she eventually bought the Caribbean Motel in Madeira, and Royal Stewart Arms in Reddington Beach, and that place on
Wow.
Sunset, but she saved everything, you know, and when I was in the service, I got her a dependent check, so she got a check every month, whatever, because I said I helped support mom, so that helped out too. But pretty much, you know, growing up back then was a lot different than it is now. We're going back up at Blind Pass Bridge on the right-hand side, on the south side, before we go over the bridge, was Page Furniture. That was Bill Page's place. It was an old cracker house, right? And it had some furniture up on the porch, and you go inside and there was furniture. And across the street was the Mr. Vacchiano. I think he had the first real Italian, best Italian restaurant on the beach. So Mr. Vacchiano had two sons, Mike and Pat. You could probably find them and talk to them. They know a little history too.
Wow.
And
Now, where was that, Joe?
the Vacchiano,
Cosmecos?
right where Cosmecos
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
That was where the Vacchiano Italian restaurant was. And
Joe, talk about the surf shop a little bit and
Suncoast Surf Shop.
Suncoast Surf Shop and how that progressed into the new building.
okay, here we go. We started like in '67. We moved in there on a wing and a prayer. You know, pinball machine, jukebox, and the pool table. Paid the rent and whatever insurance we had to have, you know, to keep the door open. And it was just sort of a joke. You know, I thought, yeah, this is better than working 9 to 5 somewhere. You know. The next thing you know, I started making a living, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and progressed along the way, and you know, just
Closed.
clothes and T-shirts, everything.
Ocean
you know.
Pacific, huh?
Ocean
When
Pacific,
that
yes.
came out, you brought that in.
Jam's World.
Yeah, well, I remember the first salesman coming in. He had a white plastic belt and creased down his pants. What the heck was his name?
Bear?
Bob. I can't remember his name. Bob Lenhart.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Lenhart. I'll never forget his name. First salesman, you know, he was selling for hang 10.
Okay.
And he walked in the store, and I go, who's this yo-yo, you know? I'm sitting around barefoot in my no shirt and barefoot, whatever. And a guy comes in with a big old suitcase, and he's gonna, you know, I says, who are you? He says, I'm the Hang 10 sales rep. I go, well, number one, you're selling surfing gear, look at the way you're freaking dressed. I says, go back out that door and get different.
your jams on.
Get different. And we hit it off, and he became one of the best salesmen for 20 years. And he always says, because I ran into him sometime in St. Thomas, he came over, you know, he was with his family, and he goes, there's the guy that dressed me. Because he
great.
always had, you know, he didn't know how to dress. He, all of a sudden, he went, you know, he was a salesman, he was on the road, he lived down in Miami or something. I says, you're gonna go to surf shops, you need to get casual, buddy. And that time I bought a little bit of hang ten, that was my first sales rep. And next time he came, I think he had shorts on, remember Bob?
Mm-hmm.
Super nice guy. So that's one story. All right, here we go. Next, fast forward, and more salesmen came. Hanson Surfboards showed up. And what's her name? That number one female surfer girl that won the world. She was 15 years old, number one. She came in a promotion, stayed at my mom's house. Remember? She was a vegetarian. My mom cooked lasagna with meat. But she couldn't eat it. Margot Godfrey, that was her name.
Yeah.
She was the number one female surfer in the world then. And she stayed at my mom's house, and we had to figure out something real quick to feed her because she doesn't eat meat. So that was, you know, we over the years we had every famous surfer came through. Sean Thompson, Corky Carroll, Mike Doyle, Hobie Alter, Dewey Weber, all those guys came through over the years. And then we were also a ticket outlet for concerts. So if you know, back then before they had computers, Suncoast Surf Shop was like St. Petersburg. The only place to buy a concert ticket was at my store. And a lot of times some of the band members would come in and just hang out and visit. And we didn't know who they were, but like later on we found out it was like some of the guys from Pink Floyd were there, and the Eagles all hung out there. You know,
Wow.
and Bob Crane showed up once from Hogan's Hero. And we've had, and John Prine comes there a lot. Buffett came there, and who else? You remember when Bob Crane was there, don't you?
Oh,
Hogan's
yeah.
Heroes.
Mm-hmm.
That
With
was,
his son that had a broken arm.
and his daughter, and his
Yeah.
wife. They sat in the store for
Hogan's-
hours.
So didn't you have to rebuild or something?
Okay,
What
now-
happened?
all right.
Was there a fire?
All right,
or-
somehow or another-
Fire, yeah.
I was getting ready to go on a sailing trip,
Mhm.
and what's her name?
Christy.
Christy and I were dating. We were living in the surf shop, and we're getting ready to go on a sailing trip. We were leaving like in about 2 weeks from the date of the fire. And it was her birthday, and she says, let's get out of here. We've been living in the shop for 6 months every day around the clock. So off we go to Sanibel Island. We stayed at a little hotel on the beach. And about early in the morning, I get a phone call. Joe, your shop just burnt down, from Lori Foster.
Wow.
And here I am going, oh shit. I says, is it burnt down pretty good? They go, yeah, it's burnt down pretty good. I go, so, 100 mile an hour back to St. Pete is Channel 8, Channel 10, 13, everybody waiting for me to interview me. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it, and I says, I had insurance, but it didn't cover the inventory.
Yeah.
And insurance, we talk about it, we'll get into insurance later, but insurance is a waste of money, because I was paid on $150,000 fire insurance. It burnt down, they said the building was only worth 42. So the guy goes, I'll give you a check for 42 or forget it, So I took the check, and he said it'd take me a year or two to fight him. I needed to get going. So it burnt down, and we put it back together. The whole town came out with hammers and nails, and basically I had no money to pay anybody, but there's a plaque at the shop to give you a name of all the people that helped. They eventually got paid when I got money. I gave them money later in life, but they quit jobs, and we built a new shop. It burnt down May 21st, 1995. We opened up September 1st, 1995. How many people can get permits and build a 2-story place? And a lot of things happened that were magical, like you had to have a permit for the ground. In other words, they do a soil sample.
Right.
Well, I called up Tallahassee, because at Tallahassee, they got to do a county one and a state one. Tallahassee goes, we'll be there 6 months to a year. That's how far the backlog is to get a soil sample. I go, I need to build a shop. I'm out of business. I go, we're really sorry. We can't help you. And I went, shit. And I called the county, and they said, well, it'll be about a month. And I said, I need somebody now, because we're ready to go. So Paul Straubinger, he's a contractor. I'm talking to him, telling my dilemma. He goes, "What do you mean you can't get these people together?" I go, "I can't. You know, I tried." And Tallahassee said no. He says, "I've got a state inspector right now on one of my properties, and I have ends with, you know, whether that within 4 hours after that, I had a state inspector, and I mean, there's somebody who looks after us. We both guys came over and signed off, and off I went. And soil was perfect, and the city goes, "Build, go ahead, hurry up, get going."
Networking.
But the city was 100% behind us getting it built and getting it done, and they pretty much said, "We're turning our back." I mean, I shouldn't say that, but they basically, there was, I guess you have to build 2 stories when you know,
Right, FEMA.
whatever. And there was enough wood left in the back. They said, "Can you build from these 5, 6 pieces of wood?" I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Either that or you're gonna go up." I go, "Nope." So we built the whole shop from that little bit that was left in the back. But, and then from there we got, you know, quick story, all right. Vaughn had to build a shop with that big northern kind of roof where the snow comes off real
Vaughn
easy, whatever. Vaughn McCarthy. He designed it, and I go, "No, I don't want this." You know, he says, "You're gonna take it. If I'm doing this for you for free, we're doing it."
At
I
the
go,
loft.
"Okay, huh?"
At the loft.
The lot. He wanted it that way. He had this thing in his head, that's how he wanted it. Well, fast forward, stand-up paddleboards 2006, 2007.
You needed it.
They're 12 feet long. Where do you put them? What do you do? Second floor, they're all sticking straight up. We got 100 of them. It's like I looked at Vaughn, I go, "You know what? We didn't know what the future was gonna bring with this roof that you built me. Stand-up paddleboards," and it's like, whatever. Believe in one thing in this life is just, we're all here and we're all having fun. Republican, Democrat, whatever the hell you are, just go through life and have fun. Because a lot of these people aren't having any fun these days. And that's what Suncoast Surf Shop's about. Just have fun and do what you can to keep the community going and keep yourself going at the same time. But we love you.
Joe, Geraldine, thank you so much. You're terrific. Very much a part of Treasure Island's history. And keep going. Keep doing what you do.
Stay alive.
Stay going, man.
I had my 70th birthday party. He came and filmed it all, did everything for me.